Welcome to the SHIELD database. Please enter your access code. Welcome, Agent. Matt Murdock is inarguably the one and only Daredevil. The cross he bears is tailored to only fit him, and he is the only man capable of carrying it. That hasn't stopped others from trying, however. Some of these men have good intentions, however others do not, and very few of them actually have what it takes to live the life of the man without fear. Whether shapeshifters, body snatchers, or successors to the throne, none have lasted as long using the identity of Daredevil as Matt Murdock himself. Although many have been impressive and handled the role well, others have been an embarrassment to the costume. Here are 10 men who have taken on the identity of the man without fear. Skrulls are an alien race who are in a constant war with the Kree. They frequently battle the likes of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. Their power lies in their ability to shape-shift so that they are indistinguishable from their chosen subject. When Skrulls covertly invaded Earth, the Avengers suddenly did not know who they could trust. This mistrust extended to each other, as any one of them could have been secretly replaced by a Skrull copy. Daredevil's ally Echo was an Avenger at this time, and the Skrulls targeted her in an attempt to kill her and replace her. A Skrull approached her imitating Daredevil, however Echo was quickly able to see through the deception and was able to fight him off with the help of Wolverine. During the fight, the Skrull utilized the abilities of Nightcrawler, Cyclops, the Human Torch, and Wolverine. At one point in Daredevil's history, he allowed himself to become possessed by the Beast of the Hand and committed atrocities under its influence. After exorcising the monster, Matt felt as though he wasn't capable or worthy of keeping Hell's Kitchen safe anymore, and so left. The Black Panther meanwhile felt as though he was no longer worthy of Wakanda after a war with Latveria. T'Challa therefore traveled to America and took on the mantle of the Man Without Fear and the position as the protector of Hell's Kitchen until such a time that Matt Murdock felt as though he was ready to return. He was assisted by Matt's friend Foggy Nelson in setting up an entirely new civilian life to keep up appearances during the day, and focused on taking down Hell's Kitchen's newest crime boss, Vlad the Impaler, during the nights. During the Infinity War, Magus, a manifestation of the evil within the cosmic being Adam Warlock, created similarly evil doppelgangers of other heroes. Daredevil was unlucky enough to be one of the heroes selected, and his evil self was a hulking monstrous devil creature who would go on to torment the Man Without Fear for a while. The creature was armed with a billy club, just as Daredevil had, but also sported claws, razor-sharp fangs, and gigantic horns to help him in battle. The monster had no eyes but seemed to have no trouble getting around and was immune to Daredevil's radar sense. When he was finally defeated by Daredevil and Elektra, it took on an appearance much closer to the actual Matt. This, however, proved to be a helpful development, as Matt was not only able to kill the monster but also fake his own death, which he deemed necessary at the time. The man known as Bullseye has always been one of the least stable members of the supervillain community. However, for a time Bullseye suffered from a brain tumor which not only gave him agonizing headaches but also caused him to perceive everybody he encountered as Daredevil. This led to a mass killing as Bullseye murdered his way through crowds, believing everyone there to be the man he hated the most. Daredevil was unable to stop him during his first attempt but soon caught up with Bullseye, subduing him and taking him back to the hospital he escaped from to undergo a life-saving operation. He was then left to think about the moral implications of saving the life of a man who is certain to kill again. In the very earliest days of his superhero career, Daredevil went up against one of the most powerful and dangerous men in the world in the form of Victor Von Doom. Doom was able to best Daredevil and, using his scientific know-how, switch bodies with him. This was part of an elaborate plan to get close to the Fantastic Four, Doom's most frequent adversaries, so that he could enact his revenge. Daredevil, however, was inhabiting Doom's old body and was able to use that to announce to the world that Latveria, the nation Doom rules, is going to war with China. Doom, being aware that a war with China would spell the end for Latveria, returns to Daredevil and switches their bodies back so that he can undo the situation and avoid war. After learning of Daredevil's true name and identity, the kingpin of crime, Wilson Fisk, was able to use his vast influence to slowly ruin Matt's life. He began by having his accounts frozen, and then went on to take his home and his license to practice law from him. Matt began to mentally unravel, and after his sanity was gone, the only thing left for the kingpin to take was his life. He knocked Matt unconscious, covered him in whiskey, and then placed him in a car which he dropped into the East River. Matt managed to escape, however, and this simultaneously infuriated and terrified Fisk, who became desperate to draw Matt out. He did this by releasing a dangerous mental patient from prison, dressing him as Daredevil, and hiring him to kill Foggy Nelson and Karen Page, Matt's closest friends. Matt managed to intervene, defeat the patient, and claim his costume, effectively being born again. When Daredevil suffered a spell of amnesia and could no longer remember who he was, Bullseye decided to step into the costume in order to try and ruin Daredevil's reputation. He began by stealing money and jewels, assaulting police in the process. Bullseye's insanity at this point, however, had reached its peak, and it didn't take long for him to start to believe that he was the real Daredevil. He became obsessed with being seen to be a hero. However, in his twisted mind, this only led to him raping women and committing murder. During this time, Matt had been on a transformative journey of his own. Calling himself Jack, Matt had become a thief, a boxer, a vigilante, and finally donned the Bullseye costume, setting himself up to take on the new Daredevil. During the battle, Bullseye's insanity and Matt's memory issues made it difficult for the two men to discern who is the hero and who is the villain, and though Matt eventually won, he was left to agonize over the thought that there is not as much of a difference between them as he had always assumed. During the early days of Nelson and Murdock, Karen Page had developed a crush on Daredevil, not yet knowing that he was in reality Matt Murdock, the man she worked with. Foggy Nelson, meanwhile, had developed his own crush on her and decided to pretend to be Daredevil in order to win her heart. He visited Melvin Potter's costume shop and had a Daredevil suit tailored to fit him. Potter convinced Nelson to stage a fight with a supervillain to sell Karen on the lie. However, he was secretly planning on donning his newly made gladiator armor and killing Nelson in order to draw the real Daredevil out so that he could prove that the superheroes of New York are no better than anyone else. The plan does not go well for Potter, however, as soon after knocking out Foggy, the real Daredevil arrived and swiftly defeated him, temporarily putting an end to Melvin's career as the Gladiator but permanently ending Foggy's career as Daredevil. Anastasia Tatiana Kravinoff, the daughter of Kraven the Hunter, at one point tracked Spider-Man to his apartment and abducted his roommate, Van Gonzalez, believing him to be the man she had been hunting. She also took with her the Spider-Man costume so that he could wear it as she hunted him in the sewers for sport. This left Spider-Man without a costume. He decided to visit his friend Matt Murdock, and the two agreed that he could borrow the Daredevil suit on a temporary basis until his costume was retrieved. Posing as Daredevil, Spider-Man defeated the creature known as Vermin and rescued Gonzalez, although Kravinoff managed to escape. Danny Rand is one of Daredevil's close friends in the superhero community. When Matt's identity was outed by the press, he was sent to prison for his vigilante actions. Due to Danny's training as the Iron Fist, he was perfectly equipped to mimic Daredevil's fighting and acrobatics, and so was hired to pose as Daredevil to convince the public that Matt was innocent. During this time the superhero civil war began, and Danny, as Daredevil, joins Captain America in opposing the Superhero Registration Act. This puts him at odds with Iron Man's team, who eventually capture him and imprison him in the negative zone. He was eventually freed and continued to fight along Captain America's side. When Matt was eventually released from prison, he tracked down Danny, and the two realized that the man who hired Danny may have had less altruistic motives than they assumed.